All right, we'll go ahead and get things rolling here. To introduce myself, my name is Katie McNeila, Corporate Marketing Manager here at Spinutech. For any first-timers joining us today, let me tell you a little bit about Spinutech. We're a full-service digital agency that specializes in building full-funnel strategies that drive traffic and convert leads. We have offices in Cedar Falls, in Des Moines, Iowa, and Tampa, Florida, as well as remote team members in more than 30 states. In total, we're clocking in at about 170 team members these days. Today, our two presenters are going to outline the key internal and external factors that are threatening your e-commerce strategy and likely limiting your ROI and stifling the growth of your business. So let me go ahead and introduce our experts. Today, you'll be hearing from Chase Boujan and Alexis Nicholson, both of whom are paid media strategists here at Spinutech. One final note before we get started, feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation. You'll notice that the chat feature has been disabled for today's event, but we'll be monitoring the Q&A feature and plan to leave time at the end to answer any questions. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Alexis to get us started.
Thank you for that intro, Katie. So yeah, today we are going to be talking all things e-commerce, both what's happening externally in the market that is impacting your strategy, as well as the things that you can directly control, and then reviewing a case study of how we've seen this play out for one of our own clients and the success we've found with some of the things we're going to talk about today. So to kickstart us, I'm going to go through some of the external threats to your e-commerce. One of the biggest threats is just the sheer amount of competition. As more and more businesses get involved in e-commerce, the market continues to be more and more saturated, and the increase in players can kind of cause confusion for consumers. So when you have so many websites, brands, products, it's very difficult for a consumer to determine, which company should I go with? And they can tend to default towards some of those household names like Amazon, Target, or Walmart. So this is one area where having strong brand awareness, having good product reviews is really important if you are not a major brand and are kind of trying to break into the platform. This increase in competition also kind of filters out into another issue, which is making cost per clicks higher. In general, over the past 3 years, we have seen CPCs really inflate heavily. This chart here is kind of looking at all of our accounts across a variety of industries, tactics, etc. And just, that average CPC is going up as Google raises their prices. That economic inflation that we're feeling, at the grocery store also impacts tech companies, and we see Google continue to raise their prices. Having a large amount of competition makes this even more expensive, because as more people come into the market, you have more people trying to buy the same amount of users. And so one area that you really have to, be aware of is you can't just spend your way to that good performance anymore. To improve performance, you really have to look at, how do I drive better conversion rates so that I can get more out of my clicks, as opposed to, 10 years ago, it really used to just be, optimize to the lowest click and get the users that are out there. Finally, a big thing that I think we've all been hearing about for a while is, the death of third-party cookies, and kind of how data attribution has been changing quite a bit. And this really does impact our digital campaigns, because when we're relying on that third-party data for attribution, we're relying on it to let us understand what is actually working or not working. So future-proofing for those walled gardens of data is very important for e-commerce businesses right now, to make sure that you are getting the full picture into what your marketing funnel is doing. If you're only looking at last click attribution, you're going to be discounting a lot of those upper funnel tactics that are building consumer trust, because those aren't the things that people immediately purchase from, and can eventually hurt your lower down results. And so being able to pull in your own first party data, your own, Salesforce, CRM, whatever you're using for purchases, as well as looking at, total data driven attribution, all of the touch points, is really going to be important to understanding what is actually working in your campaigns, to make sure you don't leave money on the table. So with all of these external factors, we can't control the market, but we can control our reactions to them. And so I'm actually going to let Chase walk us through some of the things happening internally in your campaigns that you directly can control, and that might be leaving money on the table.
Thank you, Alexis. That was a really great job covering all those external threats. And as she said, I'm going to talk about some internal threats, which really you can think of things that are in your control. And I'm going to start going through kind of the greatest hits of when a client comes to us with an issue or with a new account, some of the things that we see. Starting off with, often when they come to us, our e-commerce clients, and we start auditing their accounts, we notice that their campaigns and their efforts are built on a poor foundation. Now, what does this foundation look like? Well, within Google Ads or whatever PPC platform that they're using, we often see several common mistakes being made in there. One is with analytics. A lot of times their analytics hasn't been set up correctly, or they're using something outdated. For instance, Universal Analytics was sunset at the beginning of July, so last month. And yet, even in the last 30 days, we've had people come to us still using that and not using GA4. The important thing with analytics is it measures all of your campaign efforts. And if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Another thing we often see is conversions and conversion settings. So for most e-commerce accounts, their primary conversion is going to be purchases. Often, though, when we audit these conversion settings, we see that they're set up correctly, that they are not importing all the conversion data into it, or they might be missing important secondary conversions like add to carts and checkouts, where since they're not measuring it, we can't see where in the funnel consumers are falling off. And again, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Lastly, a common thing we see is attribution settings. This is when someone converts how Google or whatever digital platform you're using properly attributes that conversion to the right channel. We'll often see that they're using outdated attribution settings like last click or first click, which are, like I said, it's really not best practice to use those anymore, and you're really missing out on important data. Also, because often these conversion paths are multi-step. It's often the case that a conversion might start with paid or start with email or organic, but it ends in a totally different way. So if you're using last click, you're really missing out on the full story of what's really driving the success of your e-commerce business. Nowadays, best practice is to use data-driven attribution. This is for Google Analytics as well as Google Ads, which uses machine learning and AI to properly weight and attribute your conversions to the right channels. Now, besides that, for your e-commerce business, your feed is really the lifeblood of your business. People often come to us and they aren't using a feed management partner. They're managing their feeds in-house. Totally get it. Feed management partners aren't cheap. And yet one of the best things that most e-commerce businesses can do is hire a feed management partner like Feedonomics. They have already figured out the best ways to manage feeds, to optimize feeds, and how to then export those feeds to every channel that you can imagine. Google Ads, Bing Ads, Walmart, all those different things. So we definitely highly recommend it. It's a huge value add to your business. Another thing that we often see is unoptimized feed data. So your feed is really the foundation of your e-commerce business, your e-commerce campaigns. And these feeds are really, if you think about it, it's a bunch of data. It's a bunch of Lego blocks. Google goes in and it takes that data and it's what it uses to build ads, or not just Google, but any service like Google. Google, its algorithms that are building this, it can't think for itself. It can only read the data that you put down there. So if your feed is missing out on important data, like your titles aren't keyword rich, you're in the wrong Google product category, you're missing GTINs or MPNs, it doesn't know the right audience out there to serve your products to. So by simply going in and optimizing this, you can open yourself up to the right audience and a much wider audience without spending an extra nickel. And as Alexis was talking about earlier, with CPCs going up, anything you can do to reach more people without spending more money is going to be a huge boon to your business. Lastly, in these feeds, often our clients aren't using, when they come to us, aren't using custom column data. This is really important. This is where you get to put your own thumbprint on your feed and label your products by, for instance, margins. Product margins is super important. Another thing is seasonality, in case you have some products that are really better in winter or in summer, or labeling what your best sellers are. Or if you have products where the customers come in and have high lifetime values, something that might not be reflected immediately in ROAS, that's where you want to label that data. So let's say though, you have good analytics, good conversion settings, your feed is in a good place. The next thing that often when people come to us, they have a misaligned focus. They don't know what they need. Of course, as an e-commerce business, what do you need? You need more sales, you need more revenue, you need to be more profitable. We all know that. But when it comes to quantifying that and saying how many more sales, how much more revenue, how much more ROI do they need, they often can't articulate that. And for us as strategists, what we help do is focus with them on their business. We're kind of like a physical trainer sitting down, figuring out what their goals are and where the path is. Often though, for this misaligned focus, where does it come from? When we really drill down into it, we see it comes from ROAS. The only metric that they're focusing on is return on ad spend, which makes sense. This is really the standard industry metric in the e-commerce business if you're doing paid campaigns. And a lot of problems actually stem from this. So on our next slide, why is ROAS not the ideal metric? Well, on the right here, I don't want anyone to get afraid, but we're going to do a little math right now. So let's first talk about, for those who don't know, how ROAS traditionally works. So for those who don't know, ROAS, return on ad spend, traditionally works like this. Let's say you're a business that sells wallets for $50 each. That means every time you sell a wallet, you make $50 in revenue. Now, within Google Ads, your average cost per acquisition, this is how much media spend you're spending on Google Ads and your CPCs and everything in order to get a new sale, is $25. So this means your ROAS is $50 your revenue divided by 25. That's your CPA there. 50 divided by 25 is 2.00. Therefore, traditionally, we would say your ROAS is 2, meaning for every dollar you spent, you made $2 back. A lot of times, the conversation and evaluating campaign success starts and ends here. And sure, you spent $1, you made $2 back. That seems great. Well, here's what ROAS misses and what of our So with ROAS, often with this wallet, you can't make them for free. These wallets, let's assume they cost $40 to make, and that's $40 in the cost of the leather and cost of the labor, the cost to keep the lights on, the factory that you're making on, $40. So that means your margin per wallet is $50 minus $40. Every time you sell a wallet, you make $10. So what does that mean if you have a 2 ROAS? Well, your new profit is $50, that's your revenue. You gotta then subtract $40, so that's your cost, and then subtract off $25, that was your media spend in order to sell that wallet. Well, you just made minus $15. You actually lost $15 on that sale, even though your ROAS was in the green. So what you need to know then is how to break even. So in order to break even, $50 minus $40, and that X there is your break even CPA. So we just need to find X here. X is $10. That's how much the most you can spend per wallet in order to simply break even and not lose money. So this means that, there we go. To break even, your break even ROAS has to be 5. That's $50 divided by $10. So remember earlier when we had a 2 ROAS and we thought we were doing good? Well, it turns out in order to merely break even, our return on ad spend needs to be 5. So in order to be profitable then, our ROAS for our wallet business has to be greater than 5. Again, this is, if you're just looking at ROAS, why ROAS is an insufficient KPI. And if you're evaluating your e-commerce success purely on ROAS, why you actually might be leaving money on the table, or worse, losing money and hurting your business. Now, many of you are very smart and probably know that, and yet with your internal strategist or with your marketing company right now, you're not taking the next step of tying ROAS to ROI, which is what we really need to be doing in order to be successful. So that was a lot. Let's actually see what happens in a case study when we talk about everything that we've talked about so far and put it into practice. So, oh, I apologize. There's one other issue. So let's say you've done everything that we've talked about so far. Your foundation is perfect. Your feed is perfect. You have the right focus. You know what ROAS you need in order to be profitable. The last issue actually might be your strategist, the person running your accounts. You see, your strategy is only as good as the strategist who's running it. Right now, there's a lot of change in our field going on in terms of automation, machine learning, and smart campaigns. If you are your strategist is not doing what we've talked about in terms of your foundation, in terms of finding ROAS, and setting up your account in an AI-friendly way, you're still not going to be doing as well as you can out there. You're going to be leaving ROI on the table that you're not tapping into. You need a strategist who is a big believer and understands AI and machine learning as figuring out how to set up your e-commerce campaigns to take advantage of things like smart bidding and smart campaign types like performance max. A lot of strategists out there still like the old school way of doing things, of running paid media like they learned back in 2016 or 2017 and still think they can do better than machine learning. You know, when we actually test it, we always see machine learning and these smart campaigns do better. And the reason is these smart campaigns and smart bidding strategies have access to thousands of different bidding signals that your human strategist does not have access to. Not only that, the smart campaigns can be making optimizations in real time, whereas the strategist has to pull this manually and go through it manually and can't make thousands of adjustments minute to minute. So now with all that, we're going to talk about a case study about a client who came to us. They were a direct-to-consumer home goods retailer. You know, their challenges, misaligned business goals. When they came to us, they just thought hitting a 2.0 ROAS at least was good enough for them. They had data and attribution problems. Their Shopify account wasn't linked well to their Google Ads account. Not only that, their feed had a lot of unoptimized data, missing GTINs, missing NPNs, titles that weren't keyword rich. Not only that, they were facing the same external threats that everyone's facing right now, such as raising CPCs, as well as increased competition from Amazon. So here at Spinutech, this is what we did and the results we were able to get. Our solution is we were able to first go in and fix all of their data and attribution settings. After that, we were able to go into their feed and make some optimizations. Some really simple stuff like making sure their stuff was in the right Google product category, making sure their product type column was following best practices, making sure their data was very keyword rich. And lastly, once we were able to take care of that foundation, align their business goals, optimize their feed goals, the last step was to go in and set up these margin-based performance max campaigns. So we set up 3 campaigns for them based on low margin, medium margin, and high margin. So on the high margin products, for instance, we knew we had the best margins there so we could bid most aggressively. Whereas with their low margin products, we knew that there wasn't a lot of room there before they could lose out on profits. So we are a lot more conservative with our bidding strategy. As a result of doing this, of laying a good foundation, aligning our focus, and having strategists in place who believed and knew how to leverage smart bidding strategies and automated bidding solutions, we were able to see an increase in sales and revenue. Not only that, new customer acquisition, which was super important to them, was able to go up. And we were able to decrease their cost per acquisition. Oftentimes, as many of you probably know from direct experience, in order to make sales and revenue go up, you have to spend more. And so then your cost per acquisition either ends up staying flat or increases, which cuts into your margins. And not only that, their ROAS went up. And since we had tied ROAS to ROI, ultimately their ROI was also able to increase. All right, so with all that coming to our conclusion, I'm going to throw it back to Alexis to take us home.
Yeah, thank you, Chase. And thank you for walking us through that, real world example of seeing the exact things that we were just talking about in those threats. And so to recap, what does this all mean for you? How can I step away from this webinar and not just say, hey, I spent 15 minutes learning about ecom? So some of the things to immediately take away are, you can't control the market, but you can control your reactions to it. There will always be external threats that are just beyond your control, but we are able to make optimizations and decisions around that to kind of help counteract some of those bigger decisions going on. 2, data is your most important resource, especially your own, first party consumer data. So don't waste it. Make sure you're fully utilizing it. And then finally, a bad strategy, can rot your business from the inside out. To Chase's point of, if you're looking at the wrong metric, if you're not optimizing towards the right revenue, you can really start losing business. So some things to ask yourself about your current, campaigns, your current business is, how are you differentiating yourself from the competition, knowing that the market's so big? Are you fully utilizing your data? AKA, is your automation running? Better go catch it. And finally, do you have the right partner to succeed? Do you understand what you need to do, but just don't have the person in place to kind of get that started? And if so, I think you can reach out to us.
Great, thanks, Alexis. That was an excellent summary of today's conversation and really, thought-provoking questions for us to reflect on. Speaking of questions, we did have several come through the chat during today's presentation, so I'll go ahead and jump right into those. Our first question for the team: as more and more things become automated, what is the role of the strategist, and why should we hire someone to do this?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'll start by taking it. Really, the role of the strategist nowadays, and why should you hire us if bidding is automated and we have smart campaigns, yada, yada, yada. Well, first, as we talked about, Google's smart bidding algorithms can't sit you down and ask, what is most important to your business, and figure out how to get there. In addition, you need someone to really set the foundation for you. So that might mean technically going in there, auditing account, figuring out what's broken, and then figuring out the solutions of how to fix what's broken and how to get the cleanest data in there. More than that, once everything is set up correctly and you've selected the right bidding strategy, you've put in the right goals and all that, the strategist nowadays is really kind of like a horse jockey sitting on top of the horse, with the horse being AI and machine learning, and being able to pace that horse, steer it correctly, and make sure it goes where it needs to go. So even though we're less in the driver's seat of making those manual day-to-day optimizations, in fact, we're able to be more productive by standing back, seeing the big picture, and figuring out how to get our clients to their goals. And so if that means, increasing ROI without decreasing sales and revenue, being able to do exactly that.
Great, thanks, Chase. Alexis, do you have anything to add to that?
I was just going to say 100% agreed. I think one of the things I heard in a most recent Google webinar was just, you're not, as marketers, we're not competing with automation. We're competing with other marketers who are using automation. And so even, we can't be replaced by it, but we definitely need to be able to utilize it.
Actually, to add on to that, I'm reminded when Excel initially came out, people were worried that Excel was going to put accountants out of business because it just made doing spreadsheets so much faster. In fact, when researchers sat down to see what happened, it actually made accountants way more productive. They could get way more work done and look deeper into issues. And so Excel, rather than, saving time, which it did, but rather than putting them out of business, it made them way more productive. And really, AI and machine learning at the end of the day is just another tool that makes your digital marketing strategist way more productive.
Thanks, Chase. And speaking of tools, what type of first-party data is most valuable to a paid media strategy?
Yeah, I can hop in on this one to start. I would say from an e-commerce perspective, really understanding that new versus returning user is really good for looking at long-term value of customers. That's definitely one metric to identify. And then understanding kind of that revenue and margin in the breakout that Chase was going through. So to the point of, there are some products that have a really low margin, you really aren't going to get a lot of profit out of them, versus a product that is highly profitable. That's information that you have that we can use to then bid correctly. So again, to Chase's case study example of if you're able to, take a little bit of a loss and still be super profitable on a product, that's knowledge that you have that we can take and help you drive more revenue. And I can let Chase speak to that a little bit more since he definitely has a lot of that experience.
Absolutely well said, Alexis. Knowing things like you said, lifetime value of that customer or that product category and your margins. Google doesn't know that, so being able to leverage your margin data in order to bid in a way that's most profitable. I'd say besides that, whatever CRM you're using, whether it's Salesforce or Shopify, when a sale comes through, there's certain data that you capture, like emails, really passing that data back from your CRM into Google Ads, because what Google Ads is going to do is learn who your customer is. It's going to learn their behavior, how they shop, when they shop, why they shop. And it's going to translate that into literally thousands of different signals out there. Things like, time of day in certain regions of the country and what they were searching for right before they searched for your product or service. And it's going to learn on that data, and then it's going to use smart bidding strategies and smart campaign types like PMAX to optimize towards those signals and go after it. So for instance, with us marketers, we cannot see what someone was searching or doing right before they went into Google search and searched for your campaign service. So again, going back to leather wallets, if right beforehand they were reading an article on GQ of top 10 leather goods you need to buy this summer, we can't see that, but Google can. And if Google learns that's what people are doing right before they buy your product, then it will go after that. And the only way it can learn that goes back to your data and capturing that data in your CRM and being able to pass that back in. That is like worth its weight in gold.
Thanks, Chase. And I think we have time for one last question. So this question might put you guys on the spot here. So how is Spinutech different from other agencies when it comes to paid media and automation?
Yep. I'll start things off before kicking it over to Alexis. I think what really sets us apart really comes down to our philosophy around automation and machine learning and these smart campaigns. We've realized this is the direction that Google is going in and the entire industry, including marketing technology. And even though some of us might have been raised the old school way of doing everything manually and doing single keyword ad groups or single product ad groups, those strategies and tactics no longer work in this day and age. And instead of finding workarounds to continue working in a way that we might feel comfortable in or might feel normal to us, we've really leaned into the change and embraced all the changes that are happening. So that means on the account level, setting up our accounts in ways that are friendly to AI so it can learn on it, and spending extra time to make sure our data is perfect and there's no leaks in the process, and really staying up to date with the latest smart keyword match types and smart campaigns, and constantly testing it and understanding how it works so we can use it for our clients' benefits. We really do see a competitive edge when we really go all in on AI and machine learning, where we're just able to get way more search impression share and impressions and clicks at a greater scale without scaling our costs to the same rate than we were able to before. Alexis, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that really covers it well. Just like as an agency, having that philosophy of, hashtag get better every day really means that as these new tools are rolling out, instead of taking the approach of, okay, how can I make this work the way I've wanted it to work forever? We're just saying, okay, so this is the direction Google is going. We can't change that, but we can absolutely figure out how to make this work to our benefit and to our clients' benefits. Because fighting against the tide is not going to really win, as opposed to just getting on board and making it work as we can. And so I've definitely noted, we put time, we put energy, we put resources into understanding all of these new changes as they're coming out. And I think that pays out for our clients.
Well said. Great, thanks, team. If we didn't get to your question today, or you think of something later, I invite you to shoot us a note. The email address should be on the screen here. But before we close up shop, I want to say thank you to our presenters today, and thank you to everyone who took time out of their busy schedule to join us. Our next webinar is coming up in September, and in that webinar, we'll be exploring the present and future impact of AI-generated content on search engines. Because you attended today's webinar, we'll email it directly with an invitation to the next one. So thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.